Goodwill Empire says that Neil should go. Also,
I would.
I don't even know if Neil's a problem anymore, to be honest.
I would agree.
But I would not be opposed to Neil being
All right. Well, welcome to a very somber Y ball starters post game. We just witnessed the Portland Trailblazers fall in four in a series 4 games to 2 against the Denver Nuggets. They lose 126 to 115, and I think it was pretty obvious that this was coming just based off the way Portland had played all series. Just never really they just never really had a groove this series. They had some good moments. They had some good quarters. You had an unbelievable shooting performance in last game by Damian Lillard, and it just never really seemed meant to be. John, kind of what were your takeaways from the series in total before we dive into the game?
Yeah, I. They had moments. There were moments, but especially losing Game Five the way they did. It's really tough to come back from just an emotional loss like that in just 2 games. Denver really had an edge there, and when Michael Porter Jr. helped them survive that initial push in the beginning, that was really the catalyst for them. Because Portland was they were hitting everything to start, but unfortunately, so was Michael Porter.
Yeah.
So that was really a huge catalyst, kind of getting into the game. Kendall, what did you see there from Portland?
Well, I mean, they came out really hot, and as I was watching this game, one thing that Portland has done, and they've done throughout the season, is they have a lot of shooters. Like, there's no denying that. Portland is very, very, very talented offensively, individually speaking. You've got so many guys who can go make a shot. You've got, obviously, Dame, CJ, Norman Powell, Carmelo Anthony, even Anthony Simons to some degree, and tonight he hit his shots that he took. You've got a lot of guys. Even Covington has been hitting his shots. This game and last game, I thought he played well from the perimeter. So individually, you have guys who can shoot, and when they move the ball, they play really well, and you saw that in this game as well. You didn't see that last game, mainly because Dame was able to go supernova, and teammates really did botch a lot of shots that he was trying to get them off assists. But this game, you saw them moving the ball around. Dame wasn't going nuclear. He had a solid first half. But you had guys like CJ stepping up. Norm had a really good start. Anthony's hitting shots off catch and shoots. I saw a lot more ball movement. One of the ones that I think of off the bat was Norman Powell came off a screen around the wing and hit a shot from the wing side perimeter. So when you saw that, Portland extended a lead. They had the lead up to 12 points, 14 points, consistently in double figures. And then the 4 minute period hits, and Denver started ratcheting up their defense, started playing with a lot more intensity, but at the same time, Portland went cold. And I believe it was like a 20-minute period that Portland went with 7 points, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe the stat was 20-7 run over like 19 and a half minutes. We really just saw. I mean, it was kind of a summation. The second half was of Portland's season. Of there were moments where they looked absolutely unbeatable. They could get whatever look they wanted, and they seemed good enough defensively to absolutely win this game and make it a series. But I mean, when it showed when the shots stopped falling, they just they didn't have the defense. They couldn't string together stops to withstand some cold spurts, and that's what really showed all season. Is some games we would score a lot, and it would really it would mask a lot of the problems. But in those games where we weren't necessarily hitting our shots, or we were getting into foul trouble and dudes weren't able to stay on the court, we really struggled, and that's what really hurt us down the end. Is we started to get foul, and that really threw off the rhythm. It was late in the third quarter we started fouling Jokic and other Nuggets driving to the rim a lot, which really threw our offense out of rhythm, having to stop and then get back into setting and always playing a set defense versus getting a rebound and going. It made it very difficult, and that's what really took the wind out of the sails, and that was what's really led Denver to the win.
Yeah, and it really was that stretch. And like you said, too, fouling, getting all those fouls there at the end of the third. I mean, Nurk had 0 fouls heading into the third quarter. He
Oh,
exited the third quarter with 4 fouls. And I think he ended up with 5.
5,
Yeah,
yeah.
ended up with 5. And
Didn't foul out.
he didn't foul out. So, I mean, there is that little caveat there. But this all being said, this game really exposed the highs and lows that we fans of the Portland Trailblazers have been experiencing all season, which has been the Blazers look great. Like John, you were saying this during the game. When the Blazers hit their shots, they look unbeatable because when they get going hitting their shots, it seems like that it everybody catches it where they'll just start shooting and they can make any shot that they want. Melo will be hitting threes. He can get some off his post game. CJ can hit them contested or coming off a screen or creating his own shot. Dame can create his own shot and score. It just seems like everything's going, and we saw that for the first 2.5 quarters of the game, and then that last quarter and a half was where we saw the lows of the Blazers, and that's been where they cannot hit a shot. Where if they can't hit a shot, then they start reverting back to iso ball. They start not hustling as well. They start fouling a lot more. They start letting the opposing team keep scoring at will. I think one thing that was interesting from the series was outside of game 4, where Portland really did blow out Denver in that game, the Blazers would play great stretches and they never extended their lead out. Back in game 3, Portland starts out red hot shooting, but Denver's right there with them. And then Denver ends up overtaking them in the second quarter and Portland couldn't catch up. Same thing happened tonight. Portland has a good sized lead, but it never feels like that they're over the hump because they just don't have the defense to make those stops. You never feel comfortable with Portland when they have a lead. And that just comes down to defense. If you can't get stops, then you're never guaranteed a victory. And that's just something we didn't see consistently enough out of Portland.
100%. They looked great in about like 5 to 7 minute stretches. And that's what we've seen all year is they'll put together these huge stretches. And against teams that are bad, that's enough to win a game right there, especially against young teams. And then against good teams, you put enough of those stretches together in a game, and that's enough to win. And so Portland won a decent amount versus the good teams. But, I mean, when it comes to playoff time and teams are fully locked in, I mean, stretches is not enough. You need full games. And that's what really exposed Portland is there were games where Portland, I mean, Game 5, Portland easily could have won. Game 6, Portland easily could have won. Game 2, Portland easily could have won.
Yep.
I mean, pretty much all of Denver's wins, Portland could have easily won the game. It's just they were outplayed by so much in such a long stretch, and their stretches were just shorter. They needed to find a way to continually stop Denver from getting to the paint, but Denver was able pretty much to get any shot that they wanted throughout the series. A lot of times they were like relatively contested, but they were able to get to whatever spot they wanted.
I actually felt like most of the time that Denver would struggle on offense was more when they were turning the ball over. I wouldn't even necessarily say that it was contests. I mean, Portland had some contests at the rim, but I mean, any NBA team's gonna have that. I felt
you
like
would hope.
Yeah, I felt like Portland's contests were almost more creating turnovers. That is the one thing Portland does decently well is they are when they want to, they do swipe and they do poke the ball away a decent amount, and we saw that a bit tonight. But once Denver got going there, especially halfway through the third quarter, there was just no stopping them. I mean, Nikola Jokic, we talk about how bad Portland's defense is. The guy is a beast, and I'm very curious to see how he plays against the winner of this Phoenix Lakers series. I definitely don't think Denver is going to really put up a fight against either of the two. I think that they would have more of a chance against Phoenix than they would LA. But I've got to give Denver credit. They really played very well, and I'm honestly envious of the way that they played. They share the ball so well. They know how to get to their spots. It feels like that they continually attack. The difference between a team like Denver, and this is probably the way that they're obviously it's the way that they're coached, but I think too some of it is the players' mindsets as well and buying into the system. Um, but they're always getting to their spots on the floor. They always are setting up plays and actions that are going to get another teammate involved or put the primary ball handler in the best position to make a play. Portland doesn't always do that. Portland might do that for spurts throughout a game, but they're never going to put together a full 48 minutes. And I think a lot of that you can put on the coaching, but I think some of that too is Dame and CJ have been given the freedom, and a lot of it rightfully so, to create their own shot, be ISO players on offense. And that's good. They're talented enough, especially Dame. But you have to set your teammates and your strengths up for success. And I just never felt like Portland set their strengths up against Denver's weaknesses consistently enough throughout the series.
Yeah, it kind of looked like, and this series was really resembled kind of the season, was Portland was a bunch of dudes that are really, really good at basketball, playing basketball. And so they figured it out to some degree, but they weren't necessarily a group whose skill sets meshed well with each other.
Yeah.
And so we watched Portland games, and a lot of them really just looked like very, very good pickup games, which is not what you want to see. That's not sustainable, because when the shots aren't falling, you've got to find a way to still get points and still be able to hunker down defensively. And Portland just really, they couldn't figure that out.
No, and you can't go for a 20-minute stretch scoring 7 points.
Not a playoff game.
In an elimination playoff game, you just can't do that. And Portland turned the ball over a ton down that stretch. I believe that they ended up finishing with 16 turnovers, and I don't know the stat off my head, but it felt like so many of those came at the end of the third quarter and the first 8 minutes, especially of the fourth quarter. It's really just incredible to watch a team go through their very highs and the very lows in the same game. I didn't think Portland could do it, yet here we are.
They found a way.
They found a way, man. They proved me wrong. I think we were talking, it was like 6-7 minutes left in the third quarter,
yeah.
And I think I said something like, man, the only way Portland's going to lose this game is if they go ice cold, because they're just hitting so many shots. There's no way Denver can outscore them. And sure enough, they go ice cold. They start committing a bunch of turnovers. They cannot get a stop against Denver. And some of that has to do with Nurk being out while Jokic was on the floor for extended time. But it's just tough. And now we head into offseason where there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah, and kind of looking forward, going into the offseason.
I think there's a lot to look forward to.
What do you see? What do you see in Portland's future? Just kind of initial thoughts coming out of Game 6 while we're still in the playoffs. Initial thoughts. What are you thinking?
I definitely think Stotts is going to be out in the next couple days. I mean, Celtics moved pretty quick on Brad Stevens. Now, granted, that was a little bit different, but Brad Stevens promoting to GM and Danny Ainge being out. I mean, that came out right away.
Did Danny Ainge said he retired? Did I hear that? Or is he just like gone? Like I thought I heard that he retired, but that might have been a fake.
It says
source.
Danny Ainge
gone.
It says Danny Ainge retires, but it's hard. It's
hard to say.
I can't really research that up while we're doing this.
That's crazy. Yeah, that Celtic news breaks quick. I mean, there's no reason to wait, especially when you're looking for a coach. Assuming Portland does fire. I mean, we knew coming into the season that Terry Stotts needed to improve the defense to save his job. That he was starting to get on some thin ice. And Portland didn't. Their defense was their Achilles heel, and they struggled all season. And that's really what did them in the playoffs in the first round. In a series where if you're on the Portland side, you feel like, especially with Denver missing their second best player, that you have more talent. It's hard to imagine Terry sticks around. This being his, I believe, 8th straight time making the playoffs.
Yeah.
We have made the conference finals once, haven't won a conference finals game, but mostly first round losses. I think maybe 1 or 2 second round losses, but it's been a tough time. I joke that the Blazers kind of are the Hawks of the East. Kind of remind me of the Hawks back in the day when they had Al Horford and Paul Millsap and Teague and those guys. It's just they're in the playoffs and they're a good team, but they're never quite there at a championship level.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think looking at Portland's roster, you got to make some changes. You got to find a way to bring in more defense. I think part of that comes with coaching. part of that comes with personnel. Portland's a really, really small team. I think Portland's got to get a little bigger on the perimeter, and Portland's got to find a way to bring in some more defenders.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and I think at this, we already knew it. It's kind of funny how sometimes fans are very overreactionary, and I know myself and I'm sure John and our other co-host Drew, we all can be overreactionary. Like, it's kind of in our Blazer DNA to be very wildly, overly optimistic and pessimistic with our team. Uh, but it's been so obvious for so long.
But we called it in the preseason, right?
We did. We did. But that's the thing is...
Yeah, like we knew that this was going to be the problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that with this team, we saw what some of the problems would be. There's no denying that this roster is extremely talented. Between Dame, CJ, Powell, Covington, and Nurkic, that is...
And Melo.
And Melo off the bench when he's used right. That is, in theory, I mean, I think that starting five and that top six really should be able to compete with any team, maybe outside of Milwaukee, just because I think that's a terrible matchup.
But, I mean, you look at Utah's starting six. Is that six much worse than Utah's six?
I don't think talent-wise.
I don't think it's much worse. I think Utah's six is probably better. But I don't think Portland's six is much worse.
If we're talking just pure talent, talent-wise, no, because we have the best. We would have the better player in Damian Lillard. Donovan Mitchell is a great player, but Damian Lillard is. I think that he's shown through this series, even with us losing in 6 games, that he is a top.
Not his fault.
Yeah, no, not his fault. Not Dame's fault at all. I mean, his worst.
He averaged what, like 35 and 10 in the series.
Yeah,
so I think he's good.
And his worst game was his 10-point effort when we won by 30, and his role was just distributor that game.
Yeah.
So, heading into the off season, it's going to be really interesting to see what we do. I think we can say for sure Stotts is gone. There's no way he's going to last for this.
I'd be pretty surprised. Pretty enraged.
I would say the fan base would be pretty dishappy. Dishappy is a good word.
Unhappy?
I like dishappy.
Unapproved.
I think that it's very clear to say that Stotts will be gone. After that, though, that's where the questions begin, because will CJ get traded? Possibly. I would say the odds are probably greater than 50. Anybody who can watch NBA can see that Dame and CJ will not work. And it hasn't worked. The difference is we used to play defense. Now we don't play defense, and now it's really exposed. And we were talking about this during the game, too. Guys in this era of basketball, and especially compounded with the fact of how offensively biased the reffing is in this game, it's hard to get stops as it is, and when you have 2 guards who are undersized like that and don't play defense, and that's 2 of your 5 positions on the court, you're gonna get toasted. Blazers got toasted by Monte Morris, and that's no disrespect to Monte Morris. He is a good player. I would love to have him as a backup point guard on Portland. I've also watched enough Denver games to know Monte Morris does not do that on the regular, and a lot of that was us having a guard who just can't defend. So, where do we go from there? I mean, where do you think we should go from there if we trade CJ?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting options. One being Norman Powell is a restricted free agent. I mean, he's going to be looking at realistically around $20 million a year. Assuming you trade CJ, I mean, it depends on who you get back, but you got to think that that re-signing Norman Powell is a priority. But it's hard to say. It's hard to see what the market is. I think you got to go out there and be aggressive. Go ask teams that you wouldn't necessarily think. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of guys that have potential to be moved this offseason. NBA teams are really hungry at the moment and really hungry to make quick moves and big splashes. You almost wonder even if you can get in as a third party on a 3-team trade that's a blockbuster, include CJ and get someone big back that way. There's many ways to make a move. But that being said, I think first and foremost is going to be figuring out the coaching situation. Assuming they move on from Stotts, finding that new staff is going to be what's most important, I would say, because you got to figure out dudes that are going to fit the new coach's scheme to some degree.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that they'll find somebody who would fit in well with Dame. That's assuming that he doesn't request a trade. I don't think he will.
I'd be surprised. And it would go against what he has said.
Yeah, it would go against with what he said in the past. And, you can never take guys for their word 100% when they're talking to media. But Dame has gone so far and above, making his intentions clear that he wants to stay with the team. I would be pretty surprised if he requests a trade over the offseason. I just hope that this opens Dame's eyes to the fact that he's got to have some change in how the roster is built and also the way that Portland plays in order to compete. He has to get help. And I'm not even talking offensive help necessarily. I'm talking about a coach who can adjust their scheme and adjust in playoff series when need be, which Terry Stotts just could not do. And we've got to have a couple other players, specifically wings, around him who can keep up with guys like Michael Porter Jr. or Kawhi Leonard. I'm not even going to go as far as Nikola Jokic. Like, the guy's just on a completely different level, but you have to have wings who can at the very least match other teams' wings. Like, that's just where the game is at right now, and Portland just does not have a dynamic enough player. Robert Covington is a great 3-and-D presence, and I love him on the team, but he's not somebody who's going to take us over the top, and that's been apparent.
Well, I think what's really big is you got to find a way. I mean, the reason the Warriors were able to win championships is even though Steph Curry is not a bad defender, but he's not an elite defender, but they were able to find ways to hide him out there. Dame has to spend this whole series running around guarding Michael Porter Jr., who's 6'11".
Oh my gosh, what was going on with this game?
So he has to put up 40 and 10 a night for us to have a chance, and chase around Michael Porter Jr. You got to find a way to have the defenders around him and have the scheme around him so that he can spend time on defense resting, so that he has more energy to run the offense. Because I mean, just by the end of every game, he's asked so much to do on both ends. And I mean, Lillard isn't an elite defender, but he's not a bad defender. I mean, he does hold his own more often than not and contests into jump shots. Over his career, he's been a subpar defender, but he's really not that bad anymore. So you got to find a way to allow him to conserve energy on that end so that he can show even more of his offensive range. Because, I mean, it just shows, like, in this series, in this year, pretty much since the bubble, I mean, it shows Damian Lillard, his offensive ability is almost at a level that no one has seen, especially at his range. Just the ability to pull up from anywhere inside of half court is absolutely incredible.
If it weren't for Steph Curry, Dame would be the guy that everybody's talking about who's changed the 3-point line and what we think about it today. But there is a guy named Steph Curry who also happens to be a very good shooter.
Understandably, gets some pretty deserved credit. He's all right.
I would say that he's all right.
Pretty crazy.
But yeah, you've got to find ways to put players around Dame who are gonna be able to help him and take challenges defensively, so that Dame doesn't get stuck on Michael Porter Jr., which I will give Dame credit. He did hold Michael Porter. I don't know, how many points did Michael Porter even have after his out?
Well,
only had 4?
Dame wasn't guarding him when Porter was
No.
5 of 5 from 3, and then he guarded him after, and Porter pretty much did all of his damage in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, he did. No,
I think he was held, I believe,
4 points?
Scoreless in the second half? Yeah, like 4 points overall in the second half.
Maybe at the most.
He had, I believe, 22 in the first, and he finished with, 26. So, I mean, Dame did a pretty good job holding him. Porter took some bad shots. He was really pressing, trying to get back into a rhythm. But Dame can hold his own. But, I mean, Michael Porter Jr. is their second best player right now. You don't want Lillard to have to guard their second best player, especially a dude that is 8 inches taller than him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think that finally what Blazer fans have been looking for, which is change. I think that we're finally going to get some of it, and I'm sure here on the Y Ball Starters we'll probably end up doing a more legitimate off-season preview here coming up soon and kind of talk about what we're looking at. Yeah, maybe not. Kind of depends.
I think I'm probably done with basketball forever. I'm just gonna think. Just kidding.
If the refs keep calling as many fouls as they do, that's the way I'm going to be feeling. Now that, like, completely besides the point, like, for Portland, because I'm not going to go whine about the refs. The Blazers lost this series on their own. They didn't need the Blazers didn't need the refs' help. The Blazers could lose the series just fine on their own without needing refs' help with that.
Well, the Blazers lost the series, and as a separate point, refs in general in the playoffs have been terrible.
Oh my gosh!
Like
it's
just being straight. Like,
it's
like some of the calls have been really bad.
Yeah.
That is not in any sort of biased way. It's just the officiating has been pretty tough.
Oh, I think it's the whole reason why we lost.
Yeah, I would say...
It wasn't our bad defense.
I would say that we were playing two teams out there, the
Yeah.
refs and the Nuggets.
It's hard to go 8-on-5. I wish. But, yeah, anyways, the Blazers fall 4-2 against the Denver Nuggets. Hey, again, credit to Denver. They played way better than I thought they would. I really thought that this was a series where Portland had a good chance of winning in 5 or 6 games. And it just didn't turn out that way. And, you know, sometimes when a team plays like an actual team for 6 games in a row, or at least 5 of the 6 games, I'll give Denver 5 of 6 games. They played like a team. That's gonna beat talent. Like, sometimes it just does. Not all the time, but, I mean, even the Warriors, for as talented as they were, they played like a team. The Lakers last year, for how talented as they were, and Anthony Davis and LeBron could have literally just took the ball and just chucked it every single time. They're still going out there and sharing the ball. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a big reason why they won last year. Danny Green was a big reason why they won last year. Like, they had guys who could go out there and they were willing to give the ball up to and share the rock, get up shots, give their teammates confidence, and that's just something Portland does not do often enough for a full 48 minutes. I think Dame really did try his hardest with that. I mean, he had double-digit assists in almost all the games, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And would have had more teammates hit shots, but...
He had 27 potential assists in Game 5.
Yeah, which
finished with 10. That's tough.
That's tough.
That's 17 missed assists.
That's tough. Maybe we're just not as good at shooting as a team as I think. I don't know. I think a lot of it, though, is quality of looks, though. Not in Game 5. Game 5, they just brick some shots.
Game 5, they really choked out.
I mean, that happens, but a lot of it is quality of shots that we're seeing from this team.
100%.
But
they're taking tough shots. Every game. This is not a Game 6 specific thing. This is not a playoff specific thing. This team just falls in love with stepping in, taking the first jump shot that they can get, and it's just in close games. That's a tough look, and when you're not fighting for easier looks, you're not going to hit all of them.
Yeah, well, it's a tough loss, but I think it's a good thing. I think we really need to restart. I think that it's time. It's time to move on from this iteration of the Portland Trail Blazers and kind of start moving forward and kind of not even a rebuild.
Sounds like Kendall's breaking up with the Trailblazers.
I'm breaking up with the Trailblazers. I am now.
It's not me. It's you.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you guys play better. I'm just asking for 48 minutes of good ball per game.
Just asking for some help from my main man Dame. Jeez.
Wait, from Dame or for Dame?
For Dame.
For Dame.
Like,
I definitely heard
Dame.
From Dame, and
No,
I'm like,
no.
I feel like Dame played.
No.
Dame played pretty good.
Yeah, 40 and 10 isn't enough.
Come on, man. Where's 60? I need 60 and 15.
60 a night at least. No. He needs some help.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those who tuned on while we were here. We'll have a lot more content. If you guys aren't familiar with the Y Ball Starters, we have been doing live sessions after Blazer games. We'll see if there's any more to come over summertime, but
Blazer games?
Probably not Blazer games, unless we could always do
more Blazer games coming up.
We could do live post games of Blazer replays on NBA TV.
So let us know if you want them.
Let us know if that sounds interesting to you. But no, in all seriousness, we just had an amazing podcast episode today with Shante Liggins, who is the head coach at the Portland Pilots. we're going to have that episode posted here on our Spotify and YouTube, which is at YBall Starters. So if you're on our YouTube right now, you should subscribe because we got that episode coming up soon. We do have a potential first round NBA draft pick coming onto our show, possibly here soon.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
I don't know who I heard that from, but rumor says.
Wow, that's crazy.
If you want to look at past episodes, we've had episodes with Jared Lucas of Oregon State. We've had episodes with different coaches, different players, D1 basketball players. So give us a check out, subscribe, and we'll have more content coming up. And in the meantime, go Blazers. Go.
Woo!
It's time for the off season.